Good day, everyone. Today we'll be taking a look at the British-Egyptian Revolution, the revolution that lets you build Nizaam Fusiliers as the British. It happens to be one of the most powerful revolutions in the game. The main weakness of the revolution is that the British already have so many top-tier units, from their longbowmen to their rockets to their top-tier musketeers and dragoons, that it's almost hard to justify the pop space of training a bunch of Nizaam Fusiliers or Mamelukes. The problem isn't that your units will be too weak, it's that you'll have so many strong options that they don't have that same kind of push given by the other revolutions that fill in a hole in another civilization's roster. Instead, as the British, you'll be spoiled for choices, because the British already have a full military, which partly detracts from the main strength of the Nizaam Fusiliers. You see, the Nizaam Fusiliers aren't normal infantry. By going into different stances, they become more powerful in different ways, which of course makes them a great unit for the Ottomans, who have an extremely limited roster, which lacks dedicated melee infantry, which lacks true skirmishers, so they benefit immensely from the presence of the Nizaam Fusilier, since the Nizaam Fusilier is a unit that can be good at almost anything. For example, in their standard firing mode, they do bonus damage against infantry and act as general skirmishers, taking out enemy infantry just as efficiently as your Egyptian revolutionaries, while also having that added flexibility of their other modes on top of that. Their cover mode, for example, not only decreases the damage they take from incoming artillery, but it even makes them do bonus damage against enemy artillery. So if you have a group of 7 or so, and you're able to split them up effectively, and you don't group them together, then you can actually take out artillery. As is demonstrated here, where I split up the Fusiliers and I put the Fusiliers in cover mode. Since they're in cover mode, they're dealing bonus damage to the artillery piece, and since they're spread out and in cover mode, they're taking a far less damage than they otherwise would, and they win the fight. That's not to say that they're always the best choice for the job. For example, compared to musketeers, they do less damage in melee against cavalry, with the musketeers in their normal melee mode doing ×3 damage against cavalry, letting them trade effectively versus cavalry. Whereas here we see a group of Fusiliers which are going to be put into melee mode initially, which will give them a ×2.5 bonus against enemy cavalry in melee, which is somewhat less than you get with your musketeers, and since you're the British, you can't just increase that by sending the New Order infantry card. But while they may not be as strong in melee as musketeers, they have the advantage of being able to do ranged bonus damage against cavalry when they're in defensive mode, which is a bit like how the Karelians and the Swedish automatically do bonus damage against cavalry. So by being quick on your feet, and first firing in defensive mode, and then switching to melee once the cavalry gets close, you can actually do more damage to cavalry than normal musketeers. Also, when they're in stand your ground mode, they don't have any sort of multipliers against any sort of unit, but strangely enough, they do gain a bit of extra range. Now, in most situations, this isn't super useful because instead you would select a different stance that will match whatever they're going up against, whether that's standard mode for infantry, or space mode for if you're going against enemy artillery or buildings, or melee mode if cavalry is right on top of you, or defensive mode if you're firing at cavalry from afar. But if for any reason you need to hit a unit from further away that's not any of those categories, then placing them in the stand your ground stance will grant the units a tiny bit of extra range, for whatever that's worth. The only use I could personally think of is either hitting treasure guardians from far away, outside of their aggro range, to kill the guardians without losing any HP, though at this point in the game all of the treasures have probably been gathered, or if you wanted to hit travois or other builder units from farther away, then I guess you could use this for that. You also have the charge ability, which adds 1 extra speed to them but locks them in melee until it's over. That's mainly useful for if you need to charge down low health skirmishers that have a high range resistance, such as, say, crossbowmen, or Cassador type units that have like 50% range resistance but go down in 2 hits in melee, or a squishy artillery unit like a leather cannon, an organ gun, or a flaming arrow. Sometimes you just want to kill those high damage, low HP units very quickly. Now, as the Egyptians, you have a number of cards. First off, you have Flood of the Nile, which increases gather rates for mills and plantations, as well as giving you 4 vills and giving you food crates over at your mills. It also puts 100 coin over at all of your plantations, which is useful for rebooming, because each of your citizens will cost 70 coin. Next, there is the Suez Canal card. which will give you 3 trading post wagons, and it will let you research trading post technology instantly for free. Next, you have your Infinite Revolutionaries card, your Infinite Fort card, as well as your 6 Citizenship card. Your citizens will cost 70 gold. Your Navy card will give you a Monitor, a Frigate, and a Privateer. Then there is your Infinite Horse Gun and the Nizaam Fusilier card, which lets you build Nizaam Fusiliers from your forts for a very affordable price, as long as you have food left. Next up are your Infinite Strategists card, your Gatling Camels card, your Ascari card, as well as your Zenyatta Riders and your wonderful Sudanese allies. Put all of this together and you get a revolution that isn't unbeatable by any means, but is nonetheless formidable. In the hands of an amateur like me, you can put up a fight against very powerful late game civs. In the hands of an expert who knows how to actually use the various stances of the Nizaam Fusiliers effectively, it could be an excellent civilization. As in addition to the cerebral power of the Nizaam Fusilier, you also have the dumb brute force of the Mameluke. So now you'll be able to create cavalry that can match French cuirassiers, cavalry for cavalry, whereas normally the French would have the edge on you when it comes to heavy cavalry. And through the proper utilization of forts along with Nizaam Fusiliers and your Mamelukes, you can hold off attacks that would otherwise devastate you. The key thing is that you need to reboom after you do your revolution, and you have to keep up production. Because as powerful as Nizaam Fusiliers are going to be, you could be going against late game fully buffed musketeer lines, or French cuirassier masses that will slowly wear you down and break you by sheer attrition. And no matter how grand or fancy and high damaging your army is, a continuous stream of House El Lafidi Knights will break any army composition if you don't continue to replace your losses, which is why rebooming after doing the revolution as Egypt is essential for late game warfare. Your citizens and your Mamelukes cost coin, so you're going to need to have a great number of plantations, but you also need mills because certain other units, such as your Nizaam Fusiliers, will still need mills. And after you send your Flood of the Nile card, every single one of those plantations will have enough coin on them to build a brand new citizen. So you'll have the tools that you need to reboom after you revolt, send citizenship, send Flood of the Nile, and then send Suez Canal if there are any trade posts on the map. If the fight drags on, then you're going to want to move your forts closer to the enemy base so that you can train units closer to their doorstep, and also you'll gain line of sight close to their base. If you have multiple forts up, then one thing you can do is place a fort slightly away from the others, closer to the edge of the map, and then you can use that to build grenadiers, which you can then use to swing around and take out the enemy's houses and eco, as grenadiers are great for dislodging enemies that have built up, whereas enemies that haven't built up you can usually sweep using a number of Dragoons and Mamelukes to quickly attack their economy before they have much of a chance to fight back. And then there's a good chance you'll be able to fall back and pull back your forces if it starts to become an unfavorable exchange for you, and you're not in a position to just throw resources away. As with other revolutions, revolting will turn all of your settlers into revolutionaries, so you're going to have to reboom, and while you're trying to reboom, your eco might not be what it once was. So suiciding your entire army into the enemy before you've rebuilt might not be your best option. Instead, you might want to hold off on that push until you've rebuilt your eco and you've sent in some of your powerful shipments, such as the Ascari or your Gatling camels. Although, if you have a very large army left over from before you revolted, then sometimes you're able to simply push, and then you can boom behind that push. As many players are used to revolutions that burn bright for half a second and then quickly peter out. Whereas with the Egyptian revolution, if you're given a bit of time, which can be bought by sending your forces towards the enemy, then you can boom behind that, and then you can replace your longbowmen and your pikemen with swarms of Nizaam Fusiliers and Mamelukes if you so choose, or you can mix in any combination of the above to create whatever army you want as the British Egyptian Revolution. Also, British players who use the Estates card should be advised that after revolting you won't initially be able to train your settlers from your manors. You have to send your citizenship card to train them from your manors after you send the estate card. Anyways, good luck and have fun.